A $250 million superyacht. A Van Gogh. A Hollywood movie about Wall Street greed. All bought with the same money, stolen from a country's future. About $4.5 billion, drained from a fund meant to develop a nation. And the man who orchestrated it? He was never caught. This is the 1MDB heist. One of the largest financial thefts in history. And it began with a promise to help millions of people. In 2009, Malaysia set up a sovereign wealth fund. Its name, 1MDB. The idea was good. Borrow money, invest it, and build the country. Energy, jobs, cities. Money would flow in from investors, and flow out as development. That was the promise. Here is what actually happened. At the center of it was a financier in his late 20s. Charming, connected, everywhere at once. He held no official title at the fund. No government job. On paper, nobody. And yet, somehow, billions moved on his say-so. The man with no title, moving a nation's money. First, you need the money. So the fund borrowed it, by selling bonds. The bank that arranged them was Goldman Sachs. Around $6.5 billion of bonds, in 3 deals. For that work, Goldman earned roughly $600 million in fees. Something like 10 times the going rate. And here is the uncomfortable part. The bank's own people had privately flagged the financier behind the deals as a serious risk. They went ahead anyway. The bonds were placed privately, and fast. Skipping the open, scrutinized process most deals of that size face. A fee 10 times too large isn't a fee. It's a scream. Nobody chose to hear it. The money was raised. Now it had to disappear. It left the fund headed for a joint venture. A partnership with a foreign company. On paper, a serious investment. In reality, the partner was hollow. A shell. A company that existed to receive money, and little else. From there it hopped. Company to company, account to account, country to country. A sliver went to something real, for show. The rest peeled away, into the dark. Hundreds of millions. Then billions. Every transfer had a stated purpose. Almost none of them matched where the money actually went. It was called investment. It was extraction. By the end, around $4.5 billion was simply gone. So where does $4.5 billion go? Everywhere. A superyacht, longer than a football field, worth $250 million. Masterpieces. A Monet, a Van Gogh, a Basquiat. Bought like souvenirs. Penthouses and mansions in New York, London, and Los Angeles. Jewelry, private jets, and nights at the casino most people couldn't imagine. Parties with A-list celebrities, who had no idea whose money was paying. And, unbelievably, a Hollywood movie. A film about the excess of Wall Street. Stolen money financed a blockbuster about stealing. The irony wrote itself. None of it built a road, a school, or a job. A fund called development had become a global shopping list. And the trail led to the very top. To the country's prime minister. Investigators found around $681 million, sitting in his personal bank account. His explanation. It was a donation. A gift, he said, from a foreign royal family. But a personal account is not a national policy. And the number was far too big to wave away. So how do you move billions out of a state fund, for years, without being stopped? Here's the machinery. First, a counterparty that isn't really there. A partner that looks legitimate, but is controlled by the same hands taking the money. Then, deals priced far above their value. Pay $1 billion for something worth a fraction, and the difference simply vanishes. Wrap all of it in shell companies, so the real owner is impossible to see. And rely on institutions that would rather collect the fee than ask the hard question. On the compliance side, the tell is always the same. A transfer whose stated purpose never matches its path. Money for development that only ever flows toward luxury. Any one of those checks, done properly, ends it. For years, they weren't done. Not because it was invisible. Because too many people were paid not to look. In the end, it wasn't a regulator that cracked it. It was a blogger, and a newspaper, following the documents. Leaked records, traced hop by hop, until the map of the theft was undeniable. In 2018, Malaysians voted the government out. In large part, over this. The former Prime Minister was convicted of corruption and abuse of power, and sentenced to 12 years. Then came Goldman's reckoning. For the first time, the bank's Malaysian unit pleaded guilty in a foreign bribery case. Goldman paid one of the largest anti-corruption penalties in U.S. history. Around $2.9 billion, plus a further $3.9 billion to Malaysia. And two of its own bankers faced justice. One pleaded guilty and cooperated. The other was convicted. But the financier at the center of it all? Charged in multiple countries. And still, to this day, missing. His whereabouts unconfirmed. He denies any wrongdoing. And the money is still being chased. Billions have been recovered. Billions more, may never be. A fund built on one word. Development. In the end, the only thing it developed was a shopping list. And a lesson the world keeps paying to relearn. The fraud was never the money. It was the paperwork nobody checked. Paper trail. Where money goes when no one is watching.